Welcome to N.E.T Collective, where we navigate everything together from classroom to college to careers and beyond. I'm Vinita Patel, licensed school psychologist in private practice.
I'm Kay McBrearty, career coach and founder of Waterville Partners. Welcome to N.E.T Collective. Today we are going to dive into the topic of confidence, something that our children need and a skill that we can help them build as parents. And we have an expert with us today. Vinita, can you tell us who's going to help us unpack that?
Yes, absolutely. I've been really looking forward to having this deep discussion with my wonderful friend and colleague, Leslie Randolph. Leslie is a self-confidence coach for teen girls who believes that self-confidence isn't a genetic lottery ticket, but a skill that can be learned and developed. And beyond coaching, Leslie is a curriculum developer and teacher, motivational and TEDx speaker, and the host of the inspirational podcast, Why Didn't They Tell Us? And that is one podcast that I never miss an episode of because you really leave the listeners with a lot to think about afterwards. So Leslie, with all that said, welcome to N.E.T Collective.
Thank you both so much. I am thrilled to be here and so excited for this conversation. Talk all things self-confidence.
Yes. And before we get started to the heart of this topic, I have two questions. One, where on earth were you when I was a teen? And two, what got you started in this specific space?
Well, your first question is the answer because I think I asked myself many times, where was I when I was a teen? I often say, and I say it in the podcast, that I feel so privileged to do the work I get to do so that the next generation knows better sooner. I could have saved myself. And I always say, and my mother,
right.
A whole lot of suffering if I had known then what I know now. And I think if we can equip and empower the next generation of women to love and believe in themselves and to go after their goals and chase their dreams, what a beautiful world it would be.
That's right. Yeah.
So that's what got me started. And I started coaching actually women, our contemporaries. And through my years of coaching women more my age, I realized the universal pain point, like that obstacle that gets in the way of everyone going after their goals and chasing their dreams, it's a lack of self-confidence. And it shows up in different ways, whether it's the not believing in myself or, the other emotions that fill that emotional landscape besides self-confidence. And I thought, man, what if instead of like rewiring women's brains later in life, we got in on the foundation level and taught them this when they were young while those neural pathways are still being formed. So that's what moved me to teens, and I haven't looked back since.
I mean, that's great. The formative years, right? Because I will tell you, I work with teens and I work with young adults, and I will tell you it's so much easier to work with the teens because they're more amenable to the habit formation and the change and different ways of thinking. So I think that's a really good point.
And if you think about it, the women that you probably started dealing with, it was their little girls that were not trained properly or didn't have that skill. So to your point, going back to that point, the other thing is I know as a career coach, I ask clients before I work with them on a scale of 0 to 10, how confident are you in yourself? Because that gives me a window into, where are they on that continuum? And so now today I'm very excited to learn some tools that I can help instill and build that confidence in them, but also give them tools so they can do it themselves.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that it is an inside job. And so I think that might actually be a little bit of a disclaimer for the parents, right? Self-confidence, it comes from within. But when you have those external voices and cheerleaders and actually learn how to become one for yourself, that's when the confidence grows.
Yes, the messaging is really important. So before we get further into that, I'm really curious to know, what does real self-confidence actually look like, and how is it different than appearing confident on the outside? Because I feel like there's some masking, and maybe some of that masking is accurate in one situation but not in another. So how do we get it to work from the outside in?
Yeah. So I think the three of us are part of that fake it till you make it generation, which is some of that masking that you might talk about. But I I'll start it with I call it my Leslie the Life Coach definition of self-confidence. And in all the years I've been doing this, I have not figured out a way to shorten it. So forgive me. I'll take a great big breath. Self-confidence is a feeling that comes from loving, trusting, and believing in you, and the product of taking courageous action even when every other emotion is present or possible. So that first half, it's that self-esteem piece. It's knowing who you are, loving that amazing human because she is amazing. Each of us is so uniquely good and gifted. And so to be able to see that within ourselves is so necessary. And that trust piece of, following through on what you say you're going to do and having your actions align with your values, that's the first half. The second half, the product of taking courageous action, even when every other emotion is possible or present. That is where I think true confidence shows. It's not, being great out of the gate. It's not avoiding risks because you might fail. It's actually that willingness to feel all the feels. And that is where true confidence comes from. So I think some of that masking, and I said this actually the other day to a client, I said, my brand of self-confidence might not be your brand. I walk into rooms and I am loud and I am smiling. That is not this client, and that's okay. Sometimes we see, the loudest person in the room is actually using that as a way to, as you said, mask what's going on the inside. So I go back to that inside job piece.
So a question then is, if a child or a person is anxious or shy or an introvert, can they still be confident? And what does that look like?
Yes, they can be self-confident. Anyone can be self-confident. I think that's actually one of all my pillars. And when I say self-confidence is a skill, there's no prerequisite to self-confidence. It's a choice you make, it's a skill you develop, and it is a journey you are forever on. But where it becomes problematic, I would say, of the anxiety, the shyness, the introversion, is if we allow those emotions or characteristics to become decision makers in what we do and don't do in life, right? So if we're talking about a younger kid, if they're feeling anxious about going to a birthday party because they might not know anybody, and then we don't go to the birthday party, well, then anxiety got to be the decision maker. And now we're missing out on friendships formed, or again, that courageous action, even when I felt anxious. If I'm feeling shy and I just stand in the corner, but what I really want is to make a new friend, well, then shyness won over courage or confidence. So I don't think those characteristics within themselves are problematic, I air quote. It's when we allow them to drive our actions and inform what we do or don't do.
And think of the missed opportunities that we can be surrounded by if you don't take those risks. And going to a birthday party is a risk for many of the girls I'm sure that you work with, right? But imagine what it would have been like if that girl did go to the birthday party and you make a new friend and you learn a new skill and you had fun. And that's what you always want to encourage, because these missed opportunities, I think, is what really hurts us, and it perpetuates that message.
It completely does. And ultimately, there's a fear that's driving that action, the anxiety. But that little girl who doesn't go to the birthday party, and I don't mean to catastrophize, but then she might be the older girl who then says, well, I'm not going to rush the sorority. Well, I'm not going to go on the job interview because I'm afraid of what might happen, those what if and worst case scenarios that stop us from taking that action. I actually, long before all of this, I was a theater major with a minor in psychology and sociology. I always tease I was fully equipped to be a waitress. But I loved the human condition, and theater was really just an exploration of why humans do what they do. And I remember when I finished school, I never once went on an audition.
Oh, interesting.
Never once.
Wow.
And it was a self-fulfilling prophecy. I was fully equipped to be a waitress, and that's what I did. But it was that fear of rejection, that fear of failure, that it might not work out. So instead, I just never did it. And so when, again, you ask, like, why did I pursue this?
Right.
Man, I wish I could just hug that 22-year-old girl and say, we can handle failure and rejection. regret is a much harder emotion to get over, right? So
And I'm not sure you can fully get over regret, right? Or if you do, you've made up for it in some other way, right?
absolutely. I get, with TEDx and speaking in classrooms, that theater girl inside of me is just, living her best life. I was more equipped to be Ricky Lake or Oprah than instead of an actress on the stage, because I love being me. But yeah, it was those feelings that stopped me.
Isn't that something that lack of confidence, how much it holds us back from things that, even though there's this cognitive dissonance, I really want to do this. I think I'd be really good at it, but oh no, I'm gonna, what if, something terrible happens and then I'm criticized and I won't be able to hear, move forward or live with that, and that's going to destroy me forever. It's this catastrophe feeling, or this narrative that we tell ourselves.
It's the fear, and with the fear, what's the worst that can happen and the least you can learn, right?
Absolutely.
And can you name the fear? I think if you can name the fear, then you can also overcome it, or get a plan, or get the resources to help you. And I know we've been talking about girls and your focus is on girls, but I see a lot of this also with boys. Is that fair to say?
I think it's very fair to say. And, my heart is, because it was the inner teen in me, and the women who still, as you said so beautifully, have a teenage girl still within them. So I think my girl power always says confidence coach for teenage girls, but I think girls internalize it more, and I think there is such an opportunity to support young women. But absolutely, there are no unicorns. We're all humans, and we all have those same struggles.
Well, and how about social media and how that plays into the whole landscape now? How does that build or destroy or impede confidence from what you've seen?
Well, there's so many lanes we can go down here. One is always, you cannot open up your feed without mindfulness and not get into a comparison trap, right? And the old adage is comparison is the thief of joy. I say the comparison is the thief of confidence, because we cannot compare without thinking of our deficiencies or our lack of or not enoughness. And to your point, Vinita, that narrative that we then tell ourselves. And I don't even think it's very conscious. I think it's very subconscious, but our brain's still paying attention to those subconscious messages of, less than. But I also think, if you go back to that latter part of the definition, so much about self-confidence is actually a willingness to feel emotions. And I see so many of our tweens and teens, and frankly, all of us, that use social media as an escape from feeling any kind of emotion. And so there's a lot of areas in which mindless social media can really take a toll on our self-confidence. When we're looking at, perfect photos and perfect lives and, frankly, perfect bodies and faces, it will always bring up that kind of, well, what's wrong with me? Why don't I look like that? And we don't then have the opportunity to remind ourselves of all the gifts and goodness that are within if we fall down that narrative.
Especially when these teens and young adults, their brains are still developing, and they're getting these messages upon messages of perfection. Imagine what that's doing to their own narrative about themselves.
Absolutely.
And that's where I think that the social media piece can really be harmful. There are certainly good things about it. So, every portal's got a place within the larger structure. But yes, I can see how that can be harmful to one's self-confidence. And that's one way. So to my next question is, what other ways does someone's self-confidence get damaged or destroyed or, hurt?
Lots of opportunities that we can build it, but also that we can see that it can get chipped away at. A few things that I would call confidence kryptonite with my clients is that comparison. Absolutely. You might think, as a self-confidence coach, that the young women that I have the privilege of working with are, those shy, anxious introverts. Sure, some of them are. Most of them are perfectionists, actually. And so we might think, well, I'll feel really confident if I do everything perfectly. And when I raise my hand, I know the answer and I get the grade. But we're outsourcing our worth to that achievement rather than that it's an inside job. I know who I am. I love who I am. I believe in my ability, regardless of the outcome, right? Because I already said, like, part of self-confidence is failing, is getting it wrong, is that willingness to be bad. So I think when we only do things that we are good at, when we only do things that we know we will excel, you might think that builds up the confidence. In fact, it's not. It's chipping away at it, because there will be something, and I know you all had talked about this on an episode, there will be a time, an age or a stage where you are out of your comfort zone. And if we are not strengthening that muscle from a young age of what I do when I am out of my comfort zone, how I talk to and treat myself, that really could then take a toll, and you might just tap out at that point.
Right. And I've seen it with a lot of bright students that I work with that things, have come fairly easy to them, not a lot of risk taking because they function up here, right? And then they go away to college or they're in a situation where everyone's bright. And then they kind of don't know what to do with that because they're not top dog anymore. And they've never really had to tap into working on their confidence.
Yeah. And that's where, again, it is a skill you develop. And it's not when you're always getting it right. It's what do I do when it is hard? When I'm going to say, when I'm bad at it.
What can parents do to help either model this or build this or encourage this? What can a parent do? If someone in the audience right now is listening to this going, I want my kid to have self-confidence. What can I do? And I know you said it's an inside job, so the kid's probably got to do the heavy lifting. But is there anything as a invested supporter that you can do?
Yes. Don't fear, parents. I got you.
Okay.
A couple things. One, help her get to that birthday party when she's young. Help her get to that birthday party. One of my favorite parenting tools that I offer is what I call validate before you negotiate. Validate the feeling she is feeling. To her, that anxiety, that I know you talk about nervous system. That is a threat response that is happening. Those what ifs and worst case scenarios are very real to her. As adults, we can poke holes in those what if and worst case scenarios. To her, that is 100% what is going to happen, and I cannot go. So validate that emotion. I believe you. I understand. Oh, tell me more about that. And then we negotiate with it. We poke holes in it. What else could happen, right? The worst case scenario and the best case scenario are both stories we are telling ourselves because neither one is true. Neither one is a fact. So we get to choose which one we believe. So encourage her to take risks, to do the thing that is scary. What else can we do as parents? We can model us doing the scary thing. On the morning of my TED Talk, self-confidence coach over here. I mean, I wore my Apple Watch to do my TED Talk because I was just curious what my heart rate would be. And I think it thought I was doing a high-intensity interval training class, okay? It was going. And I told my kids, I didn't tell them, I didn't walk into the kitchen, with my power pose of, I've got this. I was like, I am so nervous. Right. So that they could see, mom is going to do something that is terrifying. But we want what exists on the other side of that terrifying thing. We go to the birthday party because we want to have fun and we want to have friends. We go on the audition because maybe we want to be an actress. We go on the TEDx stage because we want to share our message with the world. If you want what's on the other side of it, you have to take that courageous action. So we model it for our kids. We show them that I'm doing this too. And this is for all of us, but it's particularly for moms. Speak kindly to yourself in front of your kids. We are so unaware of how critical we are of ourselves and how we look, so just it's a gift for you and it's a gift for them. You always have a choice in how you speak to yourself and how you think about yourself. And one of the tools I give my teen clients is, we have the bully brain and we have the bestie brain. And we always want to speak to ourselves from that bestie voice, because while we all are hopefully fortunate enough to find beautiful friends along the way, like, we are our first and forever friend, and we should treat ourselves like one.
I think that's such a great point, and I think that is a lifelong lesson, because if you are used to being critical, it's very easy to fall into that trap no matter what age you're in. So I really like that one. It starts with language, right? I mean, be kind to yourself, whether it's an internal dialogue you're having with yourself or you're saying it out loud.
Absolutely. And I think one of, like, the first pieces to cultivate confidence, and you've touched on it so beautifully, is just becoming aware of what that dialogue is. Like turning on a little flashlight in your mind of, how do I talk to myself? So many of us are just going through the day thinking we're giving the weather report of, like, I'm terrible at this and I'm a bad mother and it's 65 degrees outside, when it's like, no, one of those things is true. The other one is the narrative I'm telling myself. So if we can just become more aware of how we talk to ourselves, and it might be easier, when it comes out of our mouths and into the world, then we can hear it. But I think if we take the time to notice how we're thinking about ourselves and talking to ourselves, then we have the opportunity to negotiate with it.
So what are some tactical things that the young people can do internally? I mean, that they can do themselves. We've talked about what the parents can do. What can the young adults or the teens do to help build their self-confidence?
Well, some of it might, elicit the eye roll, which is where I always tease, this is why I have a job. Because if mom suggests it, there might be the eye roll, but when the coach suggests it, I might not get the same, I don't coach my own kids, everybody. I outsource that as well.
There's no confidence in the world that can do that, right?
Not yet. Nope, not yet. And I do get the, mom, don't coach me, when I slip into it, right? I'm a big fan of talking to your brain more than you listen to it. I think that's one of my favorite tools to give anybody, is your brain. And particularly, if we think that, that prefrontal cortex, I know you've talked about this, it's not fully developed till 25. And so we need to let our kids borrow ours for as long as we can. So that beautiful brain, before that prefrontal cortex is fully developed, is always going to, go to the negative. And so when we think of that, talking to your brain more than you listen to it, I encourage all of my clients to put a Post-it note with, like, whether it's the pep talk that they need to start the day or some I am messages, to train their brain to see the possibility of it being a great day and you being able to, have anything you want come true, but also, like, maybe the I am statements of thinking of all those strengths and quirks and characteristics that they love about themselves, so that they are wiring in their brain to see the good, not just all the negative that underdeveloped brain will focus on just to keep it safe.
And we always encourage that, is externalize what's going on the inside, because our brains can only hold on to so much. So it in some way, and correct me if I'm wrong, would this be any different than, I have to write down when I have an appointment in my assignment notebook or my planner? It's almost like, take those messages and externalize them so that they're right there.
The other day, a bit of a tangent. The other day, my daughter was saying something about how everyone's seeing these squishies right now, right? Yeah. And my daughter, her amygdala is fully developed, that prefrontal cortex we're all waiting for. But she keeps telling herself, oh, I need the squishies. I need the squishies. And one of the things I said to her, I go, your brain will believe what you tell it most often, right? Our brain isn't a truth teller. It's more of a rinse and repeat machine. So if we keep telling ourselves, I need this, or this is scary, or I'm bad at this, your brain's going to, chronicle and catalog, okay, we're scared of this, we're bad at this, we need this. And so we want to be really mindful of all those messages. So I was like, I don't want you to start believing you actually do need them, when with my daughter, it's like, she just thinks they're very cool. Of course you do, and that's fine. But But we want to be, Vinita goes back to what you say, mindful of the language.
Right.
And we get to choose that language. So let's have it be a Post-it that sits next to the toothbrush. So hopefully you're seeing it twice, that has the messages you want on repeat.
Well, and one thing that I've started saying at the beginning of every day is today is going to be the best day ever, not because it's perfect, but because I'm present. And I've been telling myself that, somebody else gave me that tip. I didn't create it. And it does. It just starts your day in a slightly different way, and it shifts your frame.
Yeah.
And your
And
lens.
that the power of reframe, I'm telling you, I think it is probably the most cost effective and under prescribed tool that is available to all of us. I love what you said about the brain. Our brains don't always speak the truth. They don't always tell the truth. It tells us whatever we tell it. So who's got the power here? You know, you really do. We can't. And that's why you started this episode saying it is a skill. And I love that, because guess what? We're not born with confidence, right? We can, it's like plasticity. You can mold it. So let's mold it to, things that will, to the point where, not things, but to the point where it benefits us.
Absolutely. And so a bonus tool that I want to throw in is exactly to your point, Vinita, that reframing. And I call it the self-confidence cha-cha-cha. and I try to teach this to all my clients, because typically the feeling that is stopping us from going to the party, going on the audition, or not seeing what's wonderful within is coming from a thought that we're thinking. And so, how I said, we need to become aware of the thoughts. So our first step is to check in. Cha-cha-cha. Check in. What is it that I'm thinking? How does this make me feel? And what does this make me want to do? And then we take a big, deep breath. One of the greatest tools in our toolkit is breath, and very few of us do it on purpose. So
Right.
We're thinking on purpose and we're breathing on purpose. So then we challenge. The thought that we are thinking, it is not a fact, it is not a truth. It is a sentence in our mind. We can choose to believe, we can choose to challenge, we can choose to let go. If that thought is making you feel terrible or making you move further from who you want to be or what you want to do, that is an invitation to challenge it. Is this true? What if the opposite is true? What else is possible? Is this thought helpful? Would I say this to my best friend? I mean, you become like your own doubt detective, poking holes in that story. And then choose something else to believe. Right. Sometimes it is very hard to go from the bully brain to the bestie brain. I can't do it to, I've got this, right? Yeah. So what is just 1% better to believe? What is one thought you can believe that actually has you moving forward versus moving backwards, or just staying completely stuck? So check in, challenge, choose something else to believe. Cha-cha-cha.
I love that. And we're going to have that on our website too, so people can, really refer to it. Can we go back to the notion that we were talking about risk taking? Because I do think that could be a crash course to gaining more self-confidence. And I'm going to get a little honest here with some of the points in my life where I either didn't take risks, or the risks I took were misdirected. And for example, I remember, planning for talks that I would have to give on executive functioning or neuropsych testing or whatever it is. And I would be so tedious and so precise with these presentations that I forgot who my audience would be. I forgot that I was presenting to a group of parents that are coming there to learn, right? Instead, I was presenting to critics. And I really think I missed the mark. And that was really because I didn't feel like I had the confidence to just present the content in the way that I knew that I could. And I've learned from that. So now, I certainly am better. But can you speak a little to that, and how taking these risks can really, if we just thought about it in a way that suits us or what we're really trying to do, can really impact our self-confidence?
I'll start here. And I love that you offered this as an adult, because one of the things that I always want to drive home is I am the self-confidence coach, right? And the only reason I am good at my job is because I feel doubt all the time. I feel anxious all the time. I am so intimately acquainted with the emotions that are the opposite of self-confidence. But now I notice them. And like I said, I negotiate with them. So how beautiful that you had that awareness, right? That I'm feeling these feelings and what are the actions we're seeing? I'm probably overstudying. I'm over rehearsing. I'm, trying to get it completely perfect. Oh, hello, perfection. That we already talked about that, right? So those thoughts of who it was and what they were going to think. I don't know, when you get to an age, I remember my mom always saying, you get to an age where you don't care what people think.
Oh, yeah.
I was like, well, when is this magical destination? But man,
I love that.
Our teens, and that was your inner teen who was afraid of being judged by others. Just the thought of being judged or even thought about by other people is so terrifying, right?
Mm-hmm.
But to your point, like if we can say it out loud, okay, well, what is the fear? What are they going to think? And who are they? All of a sudden it kind of dissipates a little bit. So you noticing, like, even having that moment of who are they, right? So right. I say this all because I want to normalize, like, the very human emotions that come along with the sometimes hard job of humaning. We're going to feel all those feels for the rest of our life. But if we can turn on that flashlight, that compassionate observer of noticing, wow, I'm feeling this way. What's the story that I'm telling right now? I'm telling myself that I am presenting this to my critics who are going to be, making, fact-checking everything I say. Oh, if I can check in, take my breath, challenge it. What else is true? I'm presenting this to parents who need this information.
Right.
I am such a compassionate, wise, and, gifted practitioner. What an opportunity I have to share my message.
And if I can take that even further, the imposter syndrome, I think, for some of us high-achieving women is very real, and so the reason that I framed it as, oh, this is for my critics, is because I didn't want the quote-unquote critics to be like, well, what is she doing up there on that stage, or on that microphone? Why is she doing that? And so that is really something that I've worked hard on, and that I don't it creeps up here and there, but it's less. It's much less. So can you speak a little bit to this imposter syndrome that relates to some of us women, that we're doing the thing, right?
I'm going the opposite direction as you, in that I'm going to oversimplify it way too much. Imposter syndrome is not a diagnosis. Right. It is believing false thoughts about you. That is what imposter syndrome is that you are believing a story that is simply not true and that undermines your credibility in who you are. So it comes back to, again, like, we can check in of noticing that. And I love that you're so honest about it. Yeah, I 100% feel imposter syndrome. But now, A, it's much less. And B, I notice it before it drives my action, before it says, I'm going to rehearse this 486 times to be sure it's perfect, right? or I go down the rabbit hole of the story that I'm telling of, like, I don't belong here, or my critics are going to judge me. So imposter syndrome, and I hope that that's a gift. Like, it's really, we're just believing a collection of thoughts that are simply not true. Right. They are not facts. They are not truths.
So a question I have, dealing a lot with college students. So I'll help clients get into colleges with assessments to figure out what majors, what careers they might want. But I'm also dealing with college students as they're coming out to help them launch their careers. What's one skill on the confidence, bandwagon that you would want every college student to leave having in their toolkit?
That's a great question.
How to make eye contact and talk to another human. And I think that is a skill that is, with the rise in technology, is not one that we are developing, right? So that's as simple as it is. Like, if we know how to talk to another human, that is one skill that AI is never going to be able to replace. So to be able to make eye contact, to have a conversation, that would be the skill. And if I can add a second one, it is still that risk taking, because we don't want them getting out of school and then not making the phone calls for the informational interviews that I know you've talked about, for raising their hand for the opportunity to meet with someone. Networking is going to become so important in who you know and your ability to just connect with other humans. But if you are unable to have a conversation with another human, that's not going to get you very far. So I would practice talking to people.
Amen.
And you know what? The nervous system is really good at keeping us in a small part of our world, right? And so for some people, like high school kids, it's not easy to make a conversation with someone that you don't know, So
Well, they think conversations are with their thumbs, not necessarily with their words, with their voice, and with their eyes and with their face. I mean, even the three of us here talking right now, we can read each other's, body language and facial expressions. And there's a skill to that. If your face is always in a screen, how can you read that?
I think where it links to self-confidence specifically is knowing that, well, wait a minute, I have something to say. I have something important to say that I would like to be heard. And it took me, all these truth bombs here today in this episode, it took me a while to really ingest that with honesty. Is that, wait a minute, otherwise I wouldn't be here doing this podcast with Kay.
Right.
If I didn't think I had good information to offer, I wouldn't. And, 5 years ago, I don't think I would have been able to really say that to myself is, hey, I have something to say. So I would love for like my teen boys, my teen clients to really know that they have something important to say that's worth hearing. And I think that is part of everything that you teach, everything that you encourage, Leslie.
Yes, and I walk this walk. I don't just talk this talk. And so to your point, my Post-it note that I had next to my toothbrush for years until it got so waterlogged, it was starting to actually when it imprints on your counter. One of the first, and this was when I first launched my business, I said, your gifts are needed in the world. That was one of the things that I said to myself every day as a reminder that it is up to me to share, if that imposter syndrome or some of that fear got in the way, I wouldn't be able to share this. And that's
Right.
my responsibility. But I also think in the age that you have something to say. Absolutely. But in the age of rising technology, I think there's also a message if you can't yet fully believe I have something to say, and I love that you acknowledge it took me a while of practicing that belief before it stuck. Also, what a gift to connect with other humans in this day and age.
Absolutely.
Maybe the I have something to say is a smile you give a stranger on the street, or is the hello to someone that is still strengthening the one skill I hope you leave with is, eye contact and the ability to talk. But that could be the belief that you start with. If the ultimate belief is I have something to say, maybe the 1% better belief is I can brighten someone's day.
Mm-hmm.
And by making eye contact with someone and smiling, that, again, I always go back to what a wonderful world it would be.
And then add to it, have a great day if you want to go for bonus points. And then ask a question if you really want to go for bonus points. But that connection, but I love, it's simple, it's free. It's, what's the worst that can happen? They don't smile back.
So this has been I have to sit with everything that, all the takeaways. And I'm going to be listening to this episode multiple times because I think it's a really, really, really important one and a really good one. So on that note, what are 3 takeaways that you can give us about self-confidence, and then 3 takeaways on what we should be doing to bolster our self-confidence, no matter how old you are?
I guess that's one of them. It's a journey you're forever on.
Yeah.
So as you keep going through life, whether it's going to the birthday party, then going on the audition or the interview, or, pickup line when your kids start school, there are going to be new situations that bring up new thoughts. So just normalize that, and normalize that when some of that negative thinking, if you take from this episode that flashlight and compassionately observing your own thoughts, and if you're like, whoa, I did not realize that's what I was thinking, you can thank your brain, thank your beautiful brain for keeping you safe. It's pointing out the negatives and those what if worst case, because it's just trying to keep you safe and keep you alive. So that it's a journey you're forever on. No prerequisite for self-confidence. It is a choice you make and a skill you develop. You can always choose to love and believe in you, and it's a choice you are so worthy of choosing. So I hope you do. And then practice that skill, whether it's talking to and treating yourself with kindness and compassion, or taking those risks and be willing to feel the feelings that come with being a human living a big, beautiful life. I think sometimes self-confidence is really just the willingness to feel any feeling and know you can handle it. Mm-hmm. If self-confidence had a voice in Inside Out, its mantra would be, I can figure this out and I can handle it. Right. So 3 takeaways from there. If you take anything at any age, I hope you borrow the cha-cha-cha.
Yes.
Because that one is such a gift of reframing the thoughts that get in the way. And I didn't even touch on this one a little bit, but if that latter part of the definition, right, the courageous action, I think we could all benefit at every age from finding what I call deliberate discomfort. Oh. Something that you like, make it a controlled study where you're like, I know I am dipping my toe into discomfort, whether it's trying, setting a goal is a playground for managing discomfort and building self-confidence. Set a goal and welcome the discomfort that will come from it. Be willing to be bad at it. Be willing to, not be perfect out of the gate. So just find a little deliberate discomfort just to train that nervous system that feelings aren't dangerous. Right. And I can figure it out.
Be curious.
Yes.
And so almost schedule the discomfort. We should all do that this week. That's my homework, is schedule something that I would normally not want to do, but know that I should do.
Is that a way to look at it? It could be looking at procrastination. Like, what's something that you've been procrastinating and why? Is it because you lack the confidence or because you're catastrophizing? What is it? And what's holding you back? What's holding you back? And can you dip your toe in the discomfort and, dig deep and look at your own confidence?
I love that. Yeah. Yeah. If you're procrastinating, chances are it's not. Chances are there is a reason that we are avoiding it rather than the story we tell ourselves of like, oh, I'm just lazy, right?
Which does not exist, by the way. No. Laziness is a symptom for something so much bigger. Yes. Yeah. Well, my goodness, Leslie Randolph, you're awesome. You are just so talented and articulate and declarative and warm in your messages. And you can learn more about Leslie Randolph, at confidencecoachforgirls.com, or you can follow along at the Coach Chronicles on socials. And tell me the name of your podcast. Again,
Why Didn't They Tell Us?
Why Didn't They Tell Us podcast. It is a really good one. Please listen.
We're glad you came today to tell us about self-confidence. Thank you.
And all of this will be on our website, along with all of the show notes. And you can learn more about Leslie. Thank you. Until next time. If today's conversation resonated with you, please share this episode with anyone who may need it. Listen wherever you get your podcasts and follow us on socials so you won't miss what's next.
We are N.E.T Collective, navigating everything together, one conversation at a time. Visit netcollective.org for additional resources, and thanks for listening.